Hello, a warm welcome to Tanzania Today. My name is Nasa Kingo. Tanzania Today is a weekly program that discusses issues of national interest. Every 24th of October, United Nations marks UN Day. And this year, 2025, the day is even a bigger one as the organization marks 80 years of existence. On the 25th of last month, that is September of 2025, the Vice President of the United Republic of Tanzania gave a remarkable speech during the United Nations General Assembly. And to me, that speech represents what Africa and Tanzania expects United Nations to be. Now, for the next 60 minutes, we'll dedicate Tanzania Today to discuss the challenges, successes, and way forward for the United Nations. For this big organization, it marks 8 decades of operations. Many thanks to our sponsor, NMB, for recognizing what Tanzania Today does for the nation. We're going to take a short commercial break, and we will be right back.
Now, it's easier than ever to make payments with NMB Lipa Mkononi. Whether you are a Tanzanian or a foreigner, you no longer need to worry about making your purchases. Simply scan the QR code, confirm your card details, and fill in the payment link. Then receive a confirmation notification. For a seamless checkout experience, save your card details securely for future payments with Click to Pay. You can save and use multiple cards to streamline your transactions. Making payments through Lipa kwa QR link is easy and safe. The link is truly Kimasta.
NMB Bank, close to you.
Welcome back. It's time now to introduce the panel. The topic is very interesting. And as I always say, interesting topics like these calls for interesting panel. The panelists in the studio today, to my right is Dr. Bravias Kayoza, who is a researcher, academic as well, analyst, and I like to call him public intellectual on issues of finance and economy. Doctor, welcome to Tanzania Today.
Thank you for having me, Kingo.
Yes. To my left is the man in charge of multilateral cooperation here in Tanzania from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. He is the director, Ambassador Noel Kaganda. Welcome to Tanzania Today,
Thank
Ambassador.
You.
Great pleasure to have you here today. And to my extreme left is Ambassador Dr. Msuya Mangachi, a retired diplomat who brings in experience of over 37 years in diplomacy, representing Tanzania in various countries as an ambassador for many years. Gentlemen, welcome to Tanzania Today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. Great subject we have on the table. United Nations is marking 80 years since its existence. Of course, it began on 24th of October 1945. Maybe let's start with Ambassador Kaganda. UN at 80 carries the message of togetherness, issues of peace, global partnerships, and security as well. It was formulated mainly to end wars. Do you think the organization has lived to its expectations?
Thank you very much, Nasa. First of all, we are very grateful to be here for this program. And I thank you for that maiden question that you've just asked. Indeed, on the 24th of October 1945, the UN Charter, which was signed in San Francisco in June of that year, entered into force, effectively bringing this organization we call the United Nations into existence, as you've rightly said. And over the 80 years of its existence, the United Nations, which is a body, and it's very important to clarify from the onset, it's a body composed of member states. At the moment, there are 193 member states. This is our organization. We are the United Nations. So it's not an abstract. It's not a distinct, isolated organization. It is us. We are the United Nations. So today and in a few days, we will be celebrating 80 years of this wonderful organization that was born out of the ashes of the Second World War. From that date, in October of 1945, we solemnly swore that we shall not have another world war, because we were ravished by the ravages and the scourge of the Second World War, which apparently killed about 85 million people. No hostility, no war in world history has killed that much. But though many people have died since then because of conflicts and wars, but this was one singular conflict that killed 85 million, and it's unprecedented. So we celebrate the United Nations under the theme UN at 80, Better Together, on the realms of peace, on the realms of development, and on the realms of human rights. These are the three pillars of the United Nations. And if I am to confess today the significance of this organization, I would start with the coming to being of the United Republic of Tanzania. Started with Tanganyika then, 1961. We became Tanganyika because the United Nations had a role to play under the Trusteeship Council. And for that reason, we were accorded, and because of the pioneering of the late Julius Kambarage Nyerere, Baba wa Taifa, we became one of the members of the Special Committee on Decolonization, C24 abbreviated. And this committee has played a significant role to ensure that all the colonized territories become independent. And this, you cannot speak of Tanzania without speaking of our role in liberation struggle. So there are many, many examples that I could tell you to prove that the United Nations has indeed played a significant role in its 8 years of existence, but I've picked one to start with, decolonization. Thank you.
Great history you have given us there, Ambassador. Maybe I would like also to continue this conversation with you. In March this year, there have been reform initiatives that have been taken by United Nations, UN at 80. Maybe you could take us through of these reforms and how it will be beneficial, especially to developing countries like Tanzania.
I thank you very much for that wonderful question, which actually kind of relates with the first question. At 8 years, the world has changed. The challenges that we faced in 1945 are different from the challenges that we're facing today, 2025. So the United Nations, to stay fit for purpose, it needs to reform. As they say, change is the only constant. Even the Vice President said this in his speech. So what is the United Nations doing? First of all, it's looking at its structure to see whether it has, over the years, it has become too big to manage. So there is fixing and kind of trying to merge and to rationalize what the United Nations is doing. So this is the first one. The second one, it is costly for the United Nations to undertake its activities. So we are looking at the budget of the United Nations. We are looking at the activities. We are looking at the operations of the United Nations, trying to minimize the cost of executing these projects, these programs, these operations, so that actually we do more with less. And why is this? Because in the recent past, you would notice that the funds that were allocated for development and for operations of the United Nations have dwindled. And with this dwindling of funds, the United Nations needs to refocus and needs to find ways in which it can exist, in which it can continue to render the important services that it does at a lower cost. So this entails moving, for example, from expensive cities that is costly to operate to less costly cities to operate. And the last one, but chiefly, over the years, we, the United Nations, have adopted so many resolutions, so many decisions. Sometimes some of these are duplicates. Some of them are redundant. So the third element is to look at the mandates and kind of to to make sure that you rationalize those that are redundant, you phase out, those that are duplicates, you harmonize, and those that needs more strengthening so that we can deliver results, are strengthened to deliver results. So the UN 80 initiative reform lies on those three important pillars. Thank you very much.
You've given us a very good foundation of our discussion today, Ambassador Kagana. Thank you very much for that. Now, the following question requires a little bit of experience, and I think this is the time to turn to Ambassador Dr. Mangachi, based on your experience of diplomacy and politics as well. In the Vice President's speech, he spoke about the need for at least 2 African countries to be permanent members of the UN General Assembly Security Council. Maybe based on the experience that you have, and we have 8 years, things are changing right now. How will this make a difference to Africa, to Tanzania?
Well, I think the issue is to discuss why is Africa demanding those 2 seats. The reason is this. The UN Security Council discusses conflicts and how to resolve them. And 70% of those conflicts that are discussed in the Security Council concern Africa.
70%?
70% of those discussions. And Africa has no permanent seat because the people who finally determine the action to be taken are the permanent 5 who have veto. And Africa is asking to be present in the room where issues that are of concern to itself are being discussed, and it is unfair to ignore 1/8 of the world population. Africa is considered to, is estimated to have about 1.4 billion people in a world where you have 8 billion people. So you cannot marginalize the interests of so many people on matters that concern life and death of the continent. And this did not start now. This demand is not coming now. This started a long time ago, but it was formalized in 2005 in a meeting in Eswatini, in Eswatini, where African leaders determined that in order to be fair, we should knock at the door of the UN Security Council and ask that we need 2 seats, 2 permanent seats with the veto, if the veto is going to continue being there, and 4 non-permanent seats, because right now we have 3 which are rotating, and this is the kind of seats which Tanzania is asking for. The UN Security Council has about 15 seats, 5 permanent members, and of course 11 non-permanent, I mean 9 permanent, non-permanent members. So this is the story behind it. And the issue has been the procrastination of taking a decision on this matter.
And I think that's the big question, that why it's not happening?
Because the arrangement for having a Security Council are coming from the decisions of establishing the United Nations in 1945. And this was the decision by essentially the countries that won the First World War. Even big countries like Germany, which have a big economy in the world, Japan, and Italy. Italy doesn't have that much big economy, but they are left out of this arrangement completely. They are not part of the permanent members, and I think by the decisions that were made, they would not be given a place to make decisions on matters of peace and security. So they were left out. But Africa was not also there. I think African countries, Ethiopia probably might have been there because it has always been there. It was not colonized except shortly by Italy, and Liberia probably could have been there. But later on, between 1950 and 1960, most of the African countries became independent. And now they are part of this United Nations family, as the director explained, and we need to be involved in the decisions that are being made concerning the African continent.
Dr. Kayoza, based on your experience of research and economy, what is Africa missing out by not being a permanent member in the UN General Security Council? And if there will be any economic value on that area, at least if we get two countries there?
Yeah, thank you again. I think I must start by commending the knowledge the two brothers, Mzee and Ambassador, have given. I think it is in the gigantic proportions on the structure and how the UN works, as Ambassador has said, and Mzee Mangachi. Secondly, it's a question about what is Africa missing? And I would tackle that question in the following ways. Number one is that the United Nations, as it is today, it is a system in its own. And in 2012, one of the leading statisticians in the world, called Nassim Taleb, wrote something he called Anti-Fragile. That's a very famous book, I think, in the last, it's one of the famous books in the last 15 years or so. And he argues that there are three kinds of systems. One is the resilient, the systems that are able to face the challenges and keep on moving. From the word resilience, that the ability of bending without breaking. And two talks about the fragile, that when they are they face obstacles, they are swayed away. And three, anti-fragile, they are able to not only to resist, but to find a way to navigate the murky waters. And I think the United Nations so far, as well explained, has been an anti-fragile organization, an anti-fragile system. That's something that we cannot wish away. However, there are issues that need to be looked into, and number one is like the Africa question that you have mentioned. I think Africa lacks three issues. Number one, is that the rules of the game, because if you hear the demands that the African countries are raising, it's about the United Nations Security Council. They are talking about the veto powers, and three, the trading rules. They are at the center of the reforms. So if you get out of the rules, the regulations, the global systems of playing, you will find that you have the undertones of those particular rules, and these undertones are on the economic side of that equation. And I think Africa, because it hasn't unleashed so much its economic muscles, it is always pushed from the center of decision, and thereby creating what Muammar Gaddafi called that security matters at the UN have become security feudalism. And some people have been saying, of course, that the world is bigger than five. But mind you, that for you to stand the grounds in that aspect, you need to have those muscles from the economic side of it. Number two, I think it is also clear that while the world is focusing, the developing world is focusing on the trajectories of growth, because you may say relatively, they are not concerned so much with development in its strict sense. They want to maintain a certain level of growth so that they can keep their development levels. Africa is concerned with development. And you can see that if you find the United States, for example, is growing by 2% of its GDP, and an African country growing at 5%, ordinarily would say that an African country is doing relatively well. But that's always the vice versa. The United States growing at 3% would be humongous in terms of the trickle-down effect of that, and an African country grows up by 5%. Now, what happens in that is that you lack the powers to control the resources, and forces outside your country, which are managed by the global powers, not in a way that you'd like to do that. And what happens is that what makes the UN move forward? He has talked about the budgeting, for example. It is not you. It is another person. But again, you look at, for example, the rules of trade, the World Trade Organization, for example. I remember one of the issues that is being debated globally, that the section about the patent rights of the World Trade Organization, Africa is paying almost $50 billion a year to protect the patent rights, which are not, in turn, helping these Africans, but they're being sold to that word, to the Africans themselves. This is more than what we get in terms of aid and the rest. And you need to change that, of course, to have that at the table. And lastly, it's about the question of peace. And therefore, I elaborated it very well. If you are faced with these squabbles and wrangles, and the conflicts are eating up your very existence.
And Ambassador here mentioned about 70%.
70%, and I like the way he has done the historization of the UN Council, I mean of the United Nations. And remember, before the League of Nations, immediately after the First World War, Maynard Keynes wrote the book which called The Economic Consequence of the Peace. Of course, at the center of that, Keynes, the later organizers and later thinkers, of course, borrowed that to shape the United Nations as it is today. And what is happening is that Africa now is too concerned with the stability, and in so doing, you are getting a lot of erosions in terms of what you could offer at the table. And today, as because of conflicts and violence, cost about $2,200 per person every year. On average, globally, it costs almost $4,000 on an African nation. It costs more than about $1.7 trillion globally, but the trickle-down effect, it's a lot of economies in Africa, in the African continent. So I think that's what Africa is missing. How do we jog through that? I think, of course, mainly depend on the domestic issues, but again, on our voices about changing how the global systems work. Our president has been, I think, instrumental in 2 occasions at the international forums. She has advocated about that. I think our vice president again made it very clear that we need to do something that makes these African nations sit or have an equal share at the table at the United Nations.
Ambassador Kaganda, maybe in charge of multilateral cooperation in Tanzania, we have this issue that is being discussed over and over again about climate action. In the speech that the Vice President of the United Republic of Tanzania gave on 25th last month, he emphasized the issue of capitalization, but also action to be taken, especially on the loss and damage fund. It's like a song. Every now and then we hear people talking about it, but there's no collective action being taken. Things are not happening really the way developing countries like Tanzania would wish to happen. Why?
Thank you very much for that very important question. Indeed, His Excellency Philip Isidoro Mpango, Vice President of the United Republic of Tanzania, alluded to this issue while delivering his remarks on behalf of Excellency President Samia at the General Assembly. Climate is science. Climate change is real. We are witnessing it, heat waves, extreme weather events, melting of glaciers, melting of glaciers on Mount Kilimanjaro. Areas where it was unheard to see mosquitoes, you go today, you find mosquitoes that are there. So climate change is real, and it's affecting. It has a huge impact on populations. And those who suffer most are the poor, the most poor, those in developing countries like the United Republic of Tanzania. But also you have small island developing states. These are the ones, actually, the threat is real and more severe to them because they face extinction. Islands are submerging. So we need climate action. And as it was mentioned by Ambassador Mangachi, since 1980s, we started to discuss this agenda on climate change. But from 1987, and particularly 1992, we had international legal regimes to govern how we act on the impact of climate change. I'm talking about the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which was adopted in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, in 1992. 30 years after, we are meeting again in Brazil, in Belém this time around, in the Amazon, because we want to see the impact of climate change on the Amazon, which is a source of life, not only for Brazil, but the world, because of the carbon sequestration and the forests, abundant forests that is available in this place. So we need to act on climate change, both on adaptation, but also on mitigation. Now, what was mentioned in the speech by His Excellency Vice President on loss and damage and capitalization of the Loss and Damage Fund, which was established during COP27 in 2022, we need to have funds which are accessible. We need to have funds which are grant-based, not loans, because that would only add to the debt that we have, the burden that we have, the debt burden that we have. We need it to go where it's needed most, particularly in developing countries, which have low capacity to mitigate and to adapt to climate change. So capitalization of this fund is a political issue, given the timing in which it was established. We are talking of a time or a period of dwindling resources. We are talking of the time where you have competing demands from all angles. We are talking of a time with polycrisis and multiple challenges. So where do you place these funds? Are we going to have enough so that we can adapt and we can mitigate and we can rebuild after being devastated by the impacts of climate change? The question, and the million-dollar question, is where do we get these funds? And this is going to be a primary subject and topic and discussion at Belém in Brazil. Where do we get these funds? Because increasingly, everybody seems to have a heavy, deep, heavy, but seems to not to dispense enough resources for development. You know, where are we putting our resources currently? Last year, in 2024, we spent the world, I'm not saying Tanzania, I'm saying the powerful in the world spent $2.7 trillion US for military wear and spent less on development and climate action in particular. So what are the signals here? What are we getting here? That we're investing more in military wear and spending less in development. The same amount, the $2.7 trillion, double that, and we would achieve the SDGs by 100% by 2030.
That's amazing.
Infant mortality would be a history. We would make considerable strides in tackling climate using these resources, but instead they're devoted to military wear. So the argument and the strong emphasis for developing countries, including Tanzania, at Belem, is that we need more resources for climate action. And we need tangible resources, not pledges.
Tangible resources and not pledges.
Indeed.
I'm sure Dr. Mangachi, Ambassador Mangachi, you have a lot to share with us when we come back. What is the right approach and how do we bring the balance into this particular issue? And Dr. Kayoza as well, you give us the economic side of it. We're going to take a short break to hear a few words from our sponsor, NMB.
Nikuulize swali, unajua kuwa unaweza kufanya malipo na matumizi ya pesa zako kila ulipo? Ndio, unaweza na NMB mkononi. Kwa kubonyeza tu, unaweza kumaliza kila unachokitaka mkononi mwako. Lipa bili zako au fanya manunuzi mtandaoni kwa kutumia kadi za kidijitali ndani ya NMB mkononi. Tuma pesa hata kwa walio nje au ndani ya nchi kwa urahisi zaidi. Fanikisha mambo yako chap kwa kupata mkopo na mshiko fasta ndani ya NMB mkononi kwa riba nafuu. Maisha yanaenda kasi na NMB tunaenda kasi zaidi kwa usalama, urahisi na haraka zaidi.
NMB Bank, karibu yako.
Welcome back. This is Tanzania Today, and we have dedicated this particular program to discuss about UN at 80. It's a big month, this month, October 2025, for the United Nations and the world, of course, as this big organization is marking 80 years since its inception on 24th of October 1945. Great discussion we have had earlier with Ambassador Kaganda, who is responsible for multilateral cooperation here in Tanzania. We want to hear some experience as well from retired diplomat Ambassador Mangachi. How do we bring the balance into this issue of climate action? We have global north, global south trying to develop, but you know, the issue of climate is coming in. We want sustainable development right now, but the developed world has been hesitant to take action on the loss and damage fund as well. And the ambassador here touched about the upcoming meeting, very important one, COP30 in Brazil in a few days, I think now. How do you bring the balance based on the experience that you have?
I think climate change is just one item, but I think what the ambassador was emphasizing was how to match international resolutions and action, particularly in the area of development. And when we are talking of sustainable development, for example, you look at all the 17 items. You know, we can mention a few. One is about eradication of poverty. Another is about eradication of hunger. The other one is on education, high quality education. Then health, then gender issues, then energy, then employment, infrastructure, and so on. And I think 4 or 5 items from number 11 to around 15, they're talking about climate, the earth, the sea, and climate change itself as a subject. And all these areas require finances. And the arrangements for finances are as uncertain as the ambassador is describing. In the Rio +5 review, which I happened to have participated a long time ago, they established a fund called Global Environmental Fund. But that Global Environmental Fund was located in the World Bank. And once you locate a fund in the World Bank, then you have problems of accessing it because there are conditions. The bank doesn't just give the funds without their conditionalities, you know? And I think this is the point which the ambassador mentioned here, that if this fund is going to be established, it must be established on concessional basis, soft loans, and even grants where possible, so that the developing countries can easily access the funds and address the challenges of climate. This is my view on that.
Great point there. On the economic side of it, Dr. Kayoza, what will be the benefits of ensuring capitalization of the loss and damage fund, as the Vice President mentioned, and the panel as well stressed on it?
Yeah, I think number one is to go back to the reasons that's why the United Nations was started. I think two principles were the underlying issues. Number one is dialogue, and number two is responsibility. When you talk about climate change today and how do we face it, of course, the financing side of it is about one dialogue that has been happening, and they have well explained. But again, in terms of responsibility, I think a lot is desired. And that's where I think we need to focus. Three issues are important again. Number one is, you know, the world has moved from unipolar kind of a system to a multipolar. But with the multipolarity again, we haven't achieved or we haven't reached at the multipolar world order. Now the order is missing. And when that order is missing, of course, the ripple effect of that is simple. One is that you will always you will have a system or systems that dialogue but don't act. And the way of being responsible are the reason as to why the United Nations started. On the other extreme is that if you don't tackle this subject well, you will have a lot of problems. One is what Ambassador Ganda has alluded to. For example, the public debt into these countries today, as we speak, because of the structuring of how to finance the ravages of climate change, have exacerbated the way interest rates act in the global financial markets, and this is eating up mostly to the poor countries. Today we are talking about the World Bank in the last few days has given a report that 23 countries in Africa, for example, are on the average of debt distress or are likely to be. 23 countries. Lucky we are not among those countries, Tanzania, and that's a credit to us. But again, is about the impact, the overall impact. Today we talk about the world in which, because of climate change, we are losing almost $2.5 trillion a year. And of that, 70% is affecting more the developing world and the emerging markets. And that is dangerous. One institution from Germany has calculated that if the trend goes as it is today, by 2050, the world will be losing $38 trillion. That means you are likely to have a lot of people sliding to poverty than ever before. And remember, in sub-Saharan area, that is also a very critical part, a very critical area to look at, because in 2000, while 62%, 13% of the total population living in poverty lived in sub-Saharan Africa, it is estimated by 2050, largely because of climate change, 63% of the poor people in the world will be on this part of the world. Lastly, is about how now economic growth will be sustained. Because if we don't do that, what will happen to the poor people, to the developing world, is that growth will shrink. And if growth shrinks, which it has started, of course, you will face two ripple effects. One is productivity, and when you don't have productivity, of course, you cannot deal with the poverty. And two, is that you will affect the global supply chains in terms of eating up to the developing countries, because they will not have enough capital, or they will use a lot of resources to deal with climate change at their space, which would otherwise be invested in other areas where they could stimulate, for example, industrialization and making sure that they upgrade their exports metrics so that to be good players in the global economic metrics.
Based on your comments, I hope something great will come out of the upcoming meeting in Brazil, especially to help out developing countries. We have sustainable development goals on the table. We have so many challenges facing Africa, Tanzania as well. We have our Vision 2050 as well to help to drive the economy of Tanzania. Maybe we want to hear from you, Ambassador, the progress that Tanzania has made on the area of sustainable development goals and whether United Nations has been of any help.
Thank you very much for that very, very important question that you have asked. But before I tackle that, I will just say one sentence. Tanzania has a heavy burden on its shoulder because we are chairing the African Group of Negotiators on Climate Change. So Africa looks into the United Republic of Tanzania, and particularly on one Dr. Richard Muyungi, who is a special envoy and advisor to the President, Her Excellency President Samia Suluhu Hassan. He is the one who is leading the negotiations for Africa. So that's why I'm saying that we have a huge burden on our shoulders. Turning to SDGs. SDGs are a blueprint that succeeded the Millennium Development Goals. The level of ambition on the SDG was quite high. We have 5 years left before end of the targets, and we are off track by 80%. We are short of $4 trillion to accomplish these SDGs. So it's a crisis in the making, but we remain hopeful and we remain optimistic. For the United Republic of Tanzania, we have done quite well on some of the SDGs than others. As it was mentioned by Ambassador Mangachi here, on SDG 1, this is a global war.
Poverty.
Poverty. I think at independence we declared war on poverty, and we haven't won the battle. Not Tanzania, but globally. The battle against poverty has not been won. But we're doing quite tremendously well on goals such as health. Health-related goals, we're doing quite well. On education, we're doing quite well. We're doing quite well on goals pertaining to energy and availability of water. We're doing quite well on work and employment and decent work. So we have something to showcase. And the United Nations, under the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, which was adopted in 2022 and it will come to an end in 2027, is contributing and supporting the United Republic of Tanzania, particularly the government, in line with our priority. And I thank you very much for mentioning DIRA 2050, which is our vision going forward up to 2050. Whereas the United Nations and the government jointly came up with this United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework in 2022, since then, the environment has changed considerably, both globally and locally. Whereas it was pegged on Vision 2025, it is now has to confront the realities and the ambitions of DIRA 2050. So we are talking and we're considering as a ministry, working with our partners, to have a midterm review of the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, exactly to look on how are we going to deliver, or how will the United Nations system and its partners deliver at national level, taking into account what has changed globally and what has changed locally. So we are ambitious, and we are looking forward to keeping the momentum until 2030. And on about 8 areas, we are confident that we'll do well. And this is not because of the support of the United Nations. This is not because of the support of partners, but we also have to give due credit to the government led by Her Excellency President Samia Suluhu Hassan, because we've come a long way to ensure that we provide affordable, accessible, and reliable health. But also in the question of energy, because of time, interest of time, I will mention clean cooking, which is a program pioneered and championed by Her Excellency President Samia. We've done quite well, and we're doing well, and we're doing great advocacy, both regionally and internationally.
And when you look at it, the issue of clean cooking as well is interrelated with climate.
It is, because
so there's a progress that we're making.
It is just transition, but it is also not only climate, but it's related to health, it's related to education,
energy,
to energy, and many other factors. You see, these goals, as it was mentioned by Ambassador Mangachi, these goals are interrelated. These goals are mutually reinforcing. So you cannot speak of one goal in absence of other goals. For example, the goal on peace and security. Without peace, without security, most of these goals are redundant. That's why it's very important to invest in peace.
Peace and security. As we're coming towards the end of our program, but we have a lot of things still to discuss. Reforms on key organizations of United Nations. Maybe we'll get comment from Ambassador Mangachi. There have been talks about much needed reforms of organizations like World Bank, IMF, WTO. Maybe based on your experience as a diplomat, why is it's very important for developing countries like Tanzania and the whole of continent of Africa that these organizations undergo restructuring?
The marginalization we are experiencing in the Security Council exists more abundantly in these Bretton Woods institutions. The decision-making structures are very discriminatory, particularly to developing countries, because they are based on shares which member states put on these banks. And as you can imagine, the share of developing countries or least developing countries are insignificant. And the voting mechanism is weighted. For example, the United States could have 25% of the shares, and it has 25 votes. And whatever magnitude the shares are related to the voting. And you have less than 1%. So since they're basing voting on a criteria which you are disadvantaged from, automatically you are eliminated from making those decisions that concern you. That is one aspect. But the second aspect is conditionalities that are attached to the kind of resources that these organizations give to developing countries. Under normal arrangements of accessing funds from other countries or banks, you just, it depends on whether you are bankable or your capacity to borrow the money and pay back. But the funds coming from IMF and World Bank are attached to a list of conditionalities which you must fulfill. And these are political, economic, and social, before you get the funds from these organizations. And Tanzania, of course, experienced this in a very bitter way, because one of the reasons that Ujamaa policy was defeated in this country was a battle of structural adjustment programs of these organizations, which they wanted us to change, including changing of political direction, multi-party systems, nationalization of public public institutions and so on. Even if you want vote, I already mentioned the multi-party systems and so on. Just to give an example of those conditionalities, and it is a very bad thing. And I think these organizations need to change this attitude if we must benefit from the funds which are accumulated or in these big institutions, because all the big countries put their money for development in those institutions, and if you want to access them, you have to be subjected to structural adjustment.
So they must change, and that's what even the Vice President stressed on his speech when he gave the speech on 25th of last month. Dr. Kayoza, I'll come back to you. I think you have your comments as well in your concluding remarks. But now let's hear from Ambassador Noel Kaganda. The Vice President mentioned in his speech Tanzania's intention for non-permanent seat for the year 2029 to 30. How does that work? But also, what's the importance of what will be the advantages of the benefits of Tanzania being there?
Thank you very much. That is a great question, actually, that you've asked. Indeed, the United Republic of Tanzania has announced publicly its candidature for a non-permanent seat of the United Nations Security Council for the term 2029-2030, election of which will be done in 2028, around mid-year, around June. And this would be, if we succeed, and I'm confident that we're going to succeed, it will be the third time in which we are actually joining the council as a non-permanent member. The first time was in 1979, 75, 76. And second time was 2005, 2006. And this will be the third time. And why is it important? It was already alluded by Ambassador Mangachi here. For many years, Africa and Latin America has been absent in terms of a permanent seat in the Security Council. So the best that we've had so far is to have a shot and to have an opportunity to serve as a non-permanent member. And every time we have an opportunity to serve in that non-permanent member status, we add voice to the deliberations of the Council. We also contribute to shaping the decision-making of the Council. So I don't recall 1975, 1976, I was not born, but I was around in, in 2005, 2006, I was around, and I was about to join the ministry. So I recall then what were the achievements. We pioneered for peace building, for example, peace building funds, but women, peace and security, but also in the Great Lakes area and tackling the conflicts and addressing the root causes to these conflicts in the Great Lakes area. So what we will do, and this is not yet firmly, and Ambassador Mangachi and other senior ambassadors would contribute to setting up the agenda and fix it once it's approved by the president, that it will be not far from what is happening in the neighborhood. The challenges that we had in 2005, 2006, some of them are resolved, some of them are unresolved. We would like to have durable peace in our neighborhood.
So that will be the main agenda. I know there's a lot to discuss on that particular area, but due to time, let me just give 30 seconds for everybody to conclude our discussion today. Ambassador Mangachi, do you have anything to add for only 30 seconds before we end the program?
Yes, first we hope that in assessing what has been achieved in these 80 years of the United Nations, issues of maintenance of peace and security, and the agenda for development for everybody, not leaving anybody behind, and issues, of course, of human rights, will be further strengthened in the years ahead, and looking forward to 8 more years, we might have a world which is free of nuclear weapons, maybe, and more peaceful, than today.
More peaceful. Dr. Kayoza.
Yeah, 2 points. Number
Yes.
one, I think Ambassador Ghana mentioned something to do with the resources, where to get the resources to do this or what we want to do. I think one of the areas is to make sure that we see the loopholes where international financial illicit flows are happening. The world is losing almost 1.7 trillion every year, and a lot of that money is, of course, is coming from the developing countries. Africa is losing roughly $89 billion a year because of illicit financial flows. And this is an area where we can easily tap the financial resources. So lastly, I think whereas the United Nations may have some issues, I don't think it is indispensable.
Great comment there. Concluding remarks, Ambassador Kaganda.
Thank you very much. I would say we are stronger together.
We are stronger together.
You and at 80, we are stronger together. Let's work towards development together. Let's work towards sustainable peace together, and work towards promoting human rights together. Because when we all develop, we all win. But when we fight, we all lose.
So the point is togetherness and not leaving anybody behind. That's it from us, Tanzania Today. As you understand, we had League of Nations, but it could not survive for long. We have United Nations now, 80 years. We have discussed challenges, successes, and way forward. I hope our discussion has been of great value to you. In case you have missed any part of this particular program, you can go to our social media platforms and watch this program anytime, anywhere. My name is Nasa Kingo. Many thanks to our sponsor, NMB. Till next time, keep it right here on TBC1.
Now, it's easier than ever to make payments with NMB Lipa Mkononi. Whether you are a Tanzanian or a foreigner, you no longer need to worry about making your purchases. Simply scan the QR code, confirm your card details, and fill in the payment link. Then receive a confirmation notification. For a seamless checkout experience, save your card details securely for future payments with Click to Pay. You can save and use multiple cards to streamline your transactions. Making payments through Lipa kwa QR link is easy and safe. The link is truly Kimasta.
NMB Bank, close to you.